What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 2023 F1 Testing Debrief Show for day 2 of preseason testing in Formula 1. Welcome to the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. I'm your host, Chris Cato, and I'm glad to be back with you again after another fantastic day of F1 running in Bahrain. We got a lot of stuff to get through today. This show is just going to be recapping and debriefing from some of the most important things that we saw in both the AM and PM sessions. And in case you missed all the action, this is your one-stop shop to get you up to speed on everything day 2 of F1 testing. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the final classification for day 2 of testing. It was a big day in many areas, and we have Zhou Guanyu finishing at the top of the leaderboard in P1, and an excellent day overall for the young Chinese driver. But we're going to go back into the AM session in just for a moment and talk a little bit about what happened in the AM. And of course, tipping off the first place was Carlos Sainz in the morning. He was the fastest, setting a faster lap time than Max Verstappen the day before. It was a lot hotter during the day than it was in day 1, so track conditions were quite hot, up into the 40 degrees temperature range. We had Sergio Perez in the car for the first time this season in the RB19 during the AM session, and Perez was mainly working on longer runs, doing different types of setups, and just getting used to the new car this season. It's why you see him a little bit further down in the standings in 7th place, was running the harder compound tires as well. Still did a handful of healthy laps, was 76 overall. But also in the AM session, a driver that continued to impress and the team that continued to impress was Williams Racing. Logan Sargent, the young American, had the entire day to himself today, and he finished the morning session in 2nd place on that soft tire, doing 74 laps overall. So it was a very good run for the young American with relatively no issues at all. Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri completed the most laps in the AM session, running 85 laps in the AT04, but he was mainly doing race simulation runs, and that's why you see him further down in the order there for that morning session, down in 10th place. He was the slowest out of the 10 drivers in the morning, but AlphaTauri was mostly working on race simulations there. Earlier on in the session, you had Fernando Alonso, who picked up some floor damage, which resulted in him ending up in the garage trying to get that fixed, and Alfa Romeo with a little bit of gearbox issues as well that limited some of their early running there. Zhou Guanyu only completing 43 laps there in the morning, but overall, other than that, it was a relatively quiet morning for them. Now, for the McLaren fans out there, we know the troubles that they had in day 1 with their brake issues again, and it was a little bit better in day 2. They didn't have too many problems either in the AM or the PM session, but there was some revelations from McLaren CEO Zak Brown that I'm sure many McLaren fans will not want to hear as they enter this 2023 season, saying, quote, "We know we set some goals for development which we didn't hit, and we felt it was better to be honest about that." Zak Brown admits McLaren F1 hasn't hit its development targets for its 2023 F1 car, but it is encouraged by planned updates. So certainly it seems like the beginning of the season will be difficult for McLaren, but not the way that McLaren fans want to start the 2023 season, and Lando Norris finishing that AM session in P9. But now let's move into the PM session, where the teams were really focusing on race simulations and longer consistent runs, especially as evening fell at the Bahrain International Circuit. Track conditions cooled quite considerably. 28 degrees Celsius was the highest track temperature during the evening session, but a lot of the teams were running some of the harder compound tires and doing some race simulation runs. But closer on into the end of the session, during the last hour, it was Zhou Guanyu who strapped on a set of the C5, the softest compound tire available here at 2023 winter testing, and it ended up giving him the spot of P1, only a few 100ths of a second quicker than Max Verstappen, who was in P2. He set that time on the C3 tire. So nonetheless, still, it was a good result there for Zhou Guanyu. Kind of a little bit of a show run and a performance run at the end there. He did 133 laps overall just by himself today. So Alfa Romeo ended up going quickest on day 2 here of winter testing. But what is interesting and was main talking point during the PM session was the troubles of Mercedes AMG F1, in particular for George Russell, who was in the car for the afternoon session. He grounded to a halt just after turn 10 after spending a little bit of time in the early stages of the PM session in the garage working on setups. He finally got out onto the track, and shortly thereafter got the hydraulic failure message on his steering wheel dashboard, and he had to pull over after the exit of turn 10. He was stuck in fourth gear, and he eventually had to retire the car, and that was his session done for the day. Only completing 26 laps was George Russell, and it really hurt George Russell, not just the fact that he didn't get that much running done, but also because of the fact that the evening conditions were the best track conditions of the day and the most relatable to what we're going to see next weekend on Saturday and Sunday for the Bahrain Grand Prix. So as many drivers were getting a feel for race simulations and qualifying simulations during the Grand Prix session times, George Russell was sitting in the garage unable to get a feel for the track. He is back in the car tomorrow morning, but he will not get another PM session run until the first race of the season. So that was George Russell's day done. And we also had some issues in the last 10 minutes of the session, which was some strange happenings also at Alfa Romeo and Williams. Zhou Guanyu went to the end of the pit lane to try a practice start, and as he engaged first gear, he had a very strange sound in the transmission and ended up putting the car back into neutral and turning the engine off, and his team had to go and collect him at the end of the pit lane and wheel him back into the garage. His day was done at that point. There was only 10 minutes left in the session, but considering the fact Alfa Romeo had some earlier gearbox issues in the day, a little bit concerning, I would say, and it puts a little bit of a damper on what was otherwise a good day for Alfa Romeo. We're going to get to the overall lap counts in just a moment. But you see there as the official Day 2 classifications, a solid run for Nico Hülkenberg for Haas as well, sitting in P5. He set that time on the soft tire as well. As a matter of fact, if you look in the top 10, Logan Sargent and Nick De Vries both setting their times on the soft tire compound. Not many of the top teams ran the soft at all. Max Verstappen did not. Leclerc and Sainz obviously did not run the soft tire either. And Max Verstappen, in his final day of testing, he was mainly doing some longer runs as well toward the end of the PM session. And he will not be back in the car tomorrow. It will be Sergio Perez who will be driving for Red Bull tomorrow. So now let's take a look at the laps completed leaderboard for day 2 of winter testing. You have AlphaTauri at the top today with 159 laps completed. That was between Yuki Tsunoda and Nick De Vries. Williams coming up in second place, 154 laps, all completed by Logan Sargent. McLaren with a much better day today in terms of laps completed with 139. They didn't even break the 100 mark yesterday. Ferrari coming in fourth with 138 laps done. Haas managed 135 laps on their own. Alfa Romeo completed the 6th most laps with just Zhou Guanyu in the car today with 133. Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso was solo today as well with 130 laps. Red Bull only completing the 7th most laps today with 123. Alpine with 108, and the fewest laps done today was done by Mercedes. And so as we wrap up the debrief show for day 2 of winter testing, we can kind of just talk a little bit about some of the winners and losers of day 2 of testing. And I think, once again, you have to put in the winner's slot today, Aston Martin. And despite some earlier damage on the car, Fernando Alonso had a really productive day with 130 laps completed. Again, showing some good pace in the Aston Martin, finishing P3 on the day. And we're going to have a little bit of news on Aston Martin in just a minute, so stay tuned because it's very interesting if it's going to end up being true. More winners of today, I think you have to include Williams once again. A trouble-free day, plenty of running done by Logan Sargent, and again, finishing in the top 10 for the 2nd day in a row. So a good day for Williams. Again, Red Bull, of course, another strong day under Max Verstappen. Although it didn't get that many laps completed in the PM session, that RB19 still looks like it's going to be the one to beat in 2023. Very comfortable on track. Really at home already in the car by the looks of it, so he looks more than ready to go for the first race. And as well as Haas, not a bad day for Nico Hülkenberg as well, finishing in the top 5 and getting a really healthy amount of laps done between him and Kevin Magnussen. So overall, you'd have to say those were some of the winners of today. And I think on the losers side, you have to look once again, the most obvious one being Mercedes, considering the fact that they were one of the only few teams just to have a really significant technical failure that resulted in George Russell only completing 26 laps, and that will really hamper Mercedes' start to 2023. So they are on a little bit of the back foot, missing out on that running in the PM session. So it was an unfortunate day for Mercedes. Other teams such as Alpine, for example, you wouldn't really say it was a positive or negative day. They were just very quiet, flying under the radar, but the team is quietly confident. and they have a lot of good things to say about their own car and about how the drivers are feeling as well. So keep an eye out for Alpine as the season gets started. We haven't seen much from them in this testings in day 1 and day 2, but they seem to have a quiet confidence about themselves heading into the first race of the season. And Ferrari had another relatively quiet day as well. Carlos Sainz in 6th place and Charles Leclerc sitting in 8th place as well, really focusing more on car setup and race simulations as well today. So before we finish up, there was just some interesting rumors and news that came from the pit lane, which was regarding the AMR 23 of Aston Martin. And this is coming from a German publication, Amos, who has a lot of good scoops and rumors in terms of the F1 world. And this was quoted from one engineer that told the German publication saying, quote, and this was talking about Aston Martin, maybe they are even ahead of Mercedes at this early stage. And to add more context to this, an engineer told Amos after doing the analysis that, quote, Aston Martin has made the biggest step forward. According to our calculations, they are at least 4th and could even be dangerous to Mercedes and Ferrari. And now this is the rumor that's going around the pit lane at the Bahrain International Circuit, is that the Aston Martin hype could be real. I mean, we talked a lot about it yesterday with Fernando Alonso impressing everybody. And I know we can't look too much into the times, but Aston Martin has done a tremendous job already. And they actually are 0.6 quicker. With Fernando Alonso's time today at day 2 of preseason testing, he is 0.6 quicker than the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix qualifying lap that Aston Martin did last season. So at least we know that Aston Martin has significantly improved their 2023 car, and some people, even in the paddock, are thinking that they could be a threat to even the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari. I'd be very curious to know what your thoughts on that is in the comment section below, so please do comment that. But very interesting developments out of day 2 of winter testing. So that about wraps up the debrief show for day 2 of winter testing. We can look quickly at the driver lineup for tomorrow, as we have Saturday, the last day of winter testing for 2023. Sergio Perez for Red Bull will get the day all to himself. Leclerc will be in the AM session for Ferrari, with Sainz taking over in the evening. George Russell will get the morning drive, while Lewis Hamilton will be in for the PM session. For Alpine, Pierre Gasly drives in the morning, with Esteban Ocon driving then in the afternoon. Oscar Piastri will get morning duties at McLaren, and Norris taking over in the evening session. Valtteri Bottas gets the entire day to himself for Alfa Romeo. And for Aston Martin, Felipe Drugovich will be driving in the morning, with Fernando Alonso then taking over in the evening. Nico Hulkenberg starts in the morning for Haas and then be taking over from Kevin Magnussen. Nick De Vries starts in the AM session for AlphaTauri, and then Yuki Tsunoda will be taking over then in the evening. And last but not least, for Williams, Alex Albon gets the entire day to himself for the last day of winter testing. So guys, that will wrap up the 2023 F1 Testing Day 2 debrief show here on the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. Please do leave your comments and thoughts below on what you saw during Day 2 of winter testing. And be sure to join us tomorrow, Day 3 AM PM session. We are live streaming on this channel. AM session, we will be live at 10 a.m. Central European Time, and then in the afternoon, we will be live 3 p.m. Central European Time. All the information on the homepage of our channel. We hope to see you all there. Thank you for watching today's streams and for watching this show. We will see you again soon.